I got a number of questions on endocrinologists, so I'm just going to go through a few and then we'll answer them collectively. Why do endocrinologists believe gluten has nothing to do with Hashimoto's? Not sure. What the heck is wrong with the endocrinologists and why are they so clueless? Why do they think levothyroxine or Synthroid is better than Armour natural thyroid medications? Why are doctors so quick to dismiss symptoms of Hashimoto's? Why does an endo say you have Hashimoto's but it does not change the course of treatment? Just continue with thyroid meds. What should be addressed and what should be addressed when you're first diagnosed? My endo says she can't advise me on the autoimmune part of my condition, said she's treating hypothyroidism and that I will always require medication. With these lifestyle changes, I'm only improving inflammation, autoimmunity, but not repairing the thyroid? Is it possible to go off meds? Why do doctors not do food sensitivity tests for people with thyroid issues? Why is muscle testing not practiced anymore? That's kind of interesting. I don't know. I think it still is, actually. Why isn't leaky gut addressed and therefore healed and supported more? As that's where autoimmune diseases start. That is so true. We're going to get into that in a moment. Why is medication prescribed before coming to the exact root of my illness? When will doctors begin to be educated to recognize, evaluate, and treat Hashimoto's and other thyroid issues as a system? Why does my endocrinologist say things like, you just need to exercise more, in response to how I can't stop gaining weight, and gluten-free is not anything? What type of doctor should we see? Endos are not helpful. It almost seems as though Hashi's needs its own specialist. My biggest question is, why are doctors telling me I just need to take Synthroid? When you're trying to find the best doctor that is within your insurance coverage, what preliminary questions do you suggest asking before setting up an appointment? Okay, so you see a lot of these questions. We definitely have some themes here. Clearly there's a great deal of frustration with endocrinologists. I mean, I don't understand it exactly, but they are the people I get the most complaints about. They seem to be the most entrenched in sort of backward thinking. They seem to be the least open to suggestion and new ideas. It's really, really frustrating. And a lot of people are sick and tired and frustrated of it. But here's the thing. There's not a lot we can do. You can't change, as Chaucer, I believe, said, you can't fart against thunder. It's just like, it's too big. The medical establishment is a huge thing we're not going to change. So stop putting your time and energy into it. Really, you're going to go to endocrinologists, what are they going to do for you? The vast majority, and there's a few enlightened ones, but the vast majority are just going to put you on Synthroid anyway. So you can get Synthroid from any type of practitioner. You can get it from a DO, you can get it from a general practitioner, you can get it from a gynecologist. There's not a lot else that an endocrinologist has to offer you, really, at the end of the day. So it doesn't really serve us to put all this time and energy into trying. It's kind of like this. It's sort of like going to a well that there's no water in. You keep going, you're just going to end up thirsty. So stop going to that well. Go to a different well. And at the end of the day, and this is what I'm going to talk about today, too, is, we have to find things that A, we don't need a doctor for, and B, you have to be your own advocate, and you have to be, you take your own initiative and take your health into your, take responsibility for your own health. So I totally get the frustration. I don't know why exactly. I mean, one of my theories is, Synthroid was the #1 prescribed drug in the United States in 2014. It's almost $1 billion in revenue. It's north of 800 million. So they control the market share. And when you control market share, you also control ideas. And, the status quo on this is like, here's a drug you give to patients. It doesn't matter if it's autoimmune or not. Just give it to them and you give it to them for life. Like, period. Like, that's the general tenor of what's taught to doctors. And a lot of doctors get their information from drug companies, let's face it. So, I think we shouldn't be naive here, and we shouldn't be overly optimistic that we're going to change this. What we need to do is change our approach to this and look at, okay, what really is going on, and where can we have the most leverage on things. So I think this last question, was a good one, which was, when you're trying to find the best doctor that is within your insurance coverage, so you have insurance, you want to use a doctor in your network, what preliminary questions do you suggest asking before setting up an appointment? Well, I think the most important thing you want to learn as you're interviewing doctors who you potentially want to work with is, are they open to suggestion? Are they willing to have a dialogue with you about your health? And are they willing to learn? And secondarily, are they aware of the role of diet and dietary proteins in the progression and the initiation of autoimmune disease? Like, are they conscious of these things? If it's, you call up someone and they say diet doesn't matter, then there's no point in even going into that office, in my opinion, because they're so ignorant, it's not even funny. Diet matters in a huge, huge way. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But, again, this is a well with no water. Like, stop going to that well. Let's go to another well. Yes, you need a doctor to prescribe thyroid medication and possibly other things if you're interested, like LDN, or low-dose naltrexone, if that's something you want to pursue. But a multitude of practitioners could prescribe it. A general practitioner, a DO, a gynecologist. Other types of doctors can prescribe it. If you're frustrated by your endo, go somewhere else. Because they're not going to do anything for you anyway, other than prescribe that medication. Okay. So let's see here. We're going to move on now to some other questions. And I think really what this brings us attention to is, like, the current conventional medical model is failing those of us who live with Hashimoto's. And really, we don't have time to wait for them to change. We have to find solutions right now. And the only way we're going to do that is, really, like I said, stop putting time and energy into what we aren't getting. And instead, let's focus on what we can do and where we have the most leverage. And that really brings us to this next group of questions that I got. By far, the things that give you the most leverage, meaning the things that give you the best results, are the things that you do every day in your life. And no doctor is going to do these things for you. Right? How you eat, how you think, how you behave, particularly with regard to stress, these are the highest leverage things that you can do. This is where you're going to get the most mileage. So the next group of questions are all about best practices. So let's talk about this a little bit. These are about solutions. Okay, so one question I got was foods to avoid with Hashimoto's and foods that help. All right, first of all, one thing to understand with Hashimoto's is what's happening with food. And why is it so impactful? Well, really, it's all about proteins. Or in a more exact sense, it's all about the amino acid sequences that make up proteins. These are what your immune system attacks in autoimmunity. And it's those interactions of those proteins with the immune system that sets off this cascade of destructive inflammation. That's what's happening with autoimmune disease. So where is your immune system in your body? Well, by some estimates, 70-80% is in your digestive tract. So that's where you have the most interaction with these proteins. And what happens is, many different people have many different variations of these reactions, essentially, to dietary proteins. Gluten is a dietary protein. Proteins in dairy, like casein, are dietary proteins. Soy is another protein. Many of the grains have proteins also that people react to. Beans, it's the lectins and the proteins that people react to. Nightshades, people have a reaction to some of those as well. So eggs, people react to those. So these are all things that potentially have reactions to. Now, in general, the foods to avoid are the foods that are most inflammatory and that you most often react to. And one of the diets that I advocate and ask people to try initially is the autoimmune paleo diet. The autoimmune paleo diet essentially cuts out a lot of the common foods that are most inflammatory. So that's grains, that's gluten, that's dairy, soy, the nightshades, beans, nuts and seeds, eggs. And it's not forever, but we want to cut them out in order to give your immune system an opportunity to calm down. And during that period also, it's a very good opportunity to work on other things like healing your gut and cleaning up the liver and looking for other places like your brain or your adrenals or other things where this destructive inflammation is causing problems. Every time you have an immune reaction, your adrenals are stressed. Every time you have a reaction in your brain gets inflamed. That's why you get brain fog. So this is a process that's constantly ongoing with the autoimmune process. And remember earlier I was talking about how this is very individualized. I mean, that's the thing we're seeing more and more and more, is that while a diet like the autoimmune paleo approach is really, really helpful, for some people it doesn't work. And one of the reasons it doesn't work is because of this variability. So you really need to find your unique palette of triggers, these different foods that cause this immune reaction, this immune response, and eliminate them. And at the same time, we need to work on healing the barrier system. So what these foods do is cause our gut to break down. And really, in my opinion, this is where autoimmunity begins. That's where it is initiated, and it's where it progresses. So we want to cut out all these things that are inflammatory and destructive, and then heal that area at the same time too. So foods that help are, organ meats are very helpful. Foods that are nutrient dense. So organ meats, organic fruits and vegetables, good fat, very, very important. Coconut oil. These are all foods that are very nutritious and are very helpful. So first we want to assess what's going on, and then we want to try and heal that area. Something else that really helps is soups. The more compromised your digestive tract is, the more you want to help the process of digestion. Soup is a great way to do that because it's kind of partially digested. You can throw it in a blender and even, make it even more digested and digestible as well. Okay, so the next question I got was, when reintroducing foods after the elimination diet, so we do this autoimmune paleo diet, and then the first phase is called the elimination diet. That's when you cut out all these different foods that I mentioned. And here's a person saying, after we go through that stage, it's usually 30 to 60 days, you can reintroduce some of these foods and see if you have a reaction to them. Reintroduce them one at a time. And this person asks, after the elimination diet, if you have no obvious reactions, can you be fairly sure that the food is not silently causing inflammation, leaky gut, or other issues? That's the thing. Sometimes these reactions are subtle, and it's hard to see. And also, there's really kind of two classes of reactions. There's digestive reactions that might be like gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, upset stomach, that sort of thing, indigestion. And the other type of symptoms are neurological. So you could have mood changes, you could have depression, anxiety, brain fog, pain, numbness, tingling, things like that. Those are also things to look at. So one of the things I advocate with everybody I work with is keep a journal. It's super, super important to keep track of this because you won't remember. People, we think we're good at remembering things. You're not. You are not good at remembering virtually anything of importance. Life is too many things happening. So these sorts of things, the best way to track them is to keep a detailed food journal. And really, you need to keep a food and behavior and reaction journal. Super important. Next question. With everything that goes along with Hashimoto's, adrenal fatigue, heavy metals, high cholesterol, excess weight, brain fog, what is the best order to address these issues? Well, that's a great question, and that's really hard to say. I mean, the most important thing is you want to try and find areas of maximum leverage. And you want to try to find, like I was saying earlier, this is a multi-system problem. So you want to try and find, okay, where am I having multiple overlaps of symptoms? The gut is one area that everybody needs to work on. So that's a sure bet. Within the gut, we have these different issues that are potentially there. There's stomach acid. Do you have enough stomach acid? Super important to evaluate that and treat it if you don't. A lot of people have hypothyroidism, have hypochlorhydria or too little stomach acid. You want to look at enzymes too, pancreatic enzymes, digestive enzymes. That's another area to consider. Then there's the gut. Do you have leaky gut? Do you have a breakdown of the gut? That's another area you want to work on. The liver function, gallbladder function. Those are all, the whole digestive tract, every little piece of it should be evaluated and treated if necessary. Then the next area to really look at is the adrenals and blood sugar. Blood sugar imbalances are a huge, huge issue for people with Hashimoto's. And they can cause a lot of problems. So make sure your blood sugar is balanced. Make sure you're not hypoglycemic. Make sure your sugar's not crashing or it's not going too high. Make sure if you're binging on sugar to get energy, that's a really destructive thing to do. So you got to really evaluate your relationship to sugar and see what's going on there. And tied very closely to that is the adrenals. So, I think those are the first areas to evaluate are the adrenals, blood sugar, kind of continuum, and then the gut. 1 and 2, or 2 and 1, or 1 and 1. What is the steps in a nutshell from test to supplements and diet? I need a summary, and then happy to have detailed reasoning. Where do I start? I'm miserable. Thank you. Okay. Sorry you're miserable. The place to start is with an assessment of all of these different systems of your body. That's what I advocate in my book, Roadmap to Remission. I give you the tools that break down how to assess every part of your body. I give you the symptoms to look for. I give you the tests. I walk you through it. I created an entire system called the APART system, which is devoted to doing proper assessment, making decisions for prioritizing what things to do, trying stuff, then evaluating what you did, making changes, and then keep going, essentially. That's what it is. That's what APART stands for. Ask and assess, prioritize and plan, act and adapt, reassess and retest, look at what you did, and then try and try again. That's what APART stands for. So get my book. Shameless self-promotion, I know. Get my book and use it. There's a system there that I created for this, for you. And it works. It works every single time. And you just apply that system to every system in your body. And you keep going. Do it to the brain. We do it for the adrenals. We do it for the gut. We do it for the kidney. We do it for the liver. We do it for the heart. Do it everywhere. Okay. What's the first thing to do when diagnosed with Hashimoto's? What I just explained. Go through and evaluate. Where else is it? It's not just a thyroid problem. So where else is it in the body? Find those areas of overlap. Those are your areas of maximum leverage. Right? If you're seeing all these adrenal symptoms and you're seeing you're hypoglycemic and you got all this stuff there, well, you know that continuum is a point of leverage. And working on that, focusing on healing that is going to make a big difference. Having a lot of digestive problems, you're sensitive to a lot of foods, you notice you're having reactions to a lot of stuff. Well, healing your gut, eliminating those triggers, and working on healing the leaky gut and the barrier systems, that's a point of maximum leverage. So the first thing you want to do is do a proper assessment. And, hopefully you can work with someone who understands this, that it's systemic. And you got to look everywhere. Everything has to be a suspect. Everything. All the foods you eat. I don't care what it is. I don't care what you love. Say goodbye to, be prepared to say goodbye to anything and everything. People in your lives, people are stressing you out, you have toxic relationships and things like that, you got to look at that because those things are destructive. Stress is very inflammatory. And you can't afford any more inflammation. You got to look at that too. Are you in a job that's not serving you? Are you in a relationship that's not serving you? Are you being exposed to environmental toxins or things like that aren't serving you? So, everything in your life has to be a suspect, and you got to look at it, and you got to look at it critically. And, if it needs to be eliminated, then that's something you got to be prepared to do. Best practices list for people with Hashimoto's. What are the first steps to take and reverse the disease? How to slow the process of the disease. Again, first steps, best practices. Best practices are the APART system that I created for you. That's the best practice. Because what that tells you is you evaluate. You have to assess first. Don't just do stuff without figuring out what's going on. First figure out what's going on. Then prioritize. What places are worst? That's what you want to do next. You figure out what's going on. Okay, this system's breaking down. Well, so is this system. Okay, which one is worse? Where do you have the most symptoms? Prioritize. Then plan. Create some sort of plan to do something about it. Then act. Put that plan into motion. Don't get paralyzed with analysis. Some people, I see them doing this all the time. They go to reading blog after blog and go join group after group and go to practitioner after practitioner and they don't do anything because they have all this accumulated knowledge and they're paralyzed. They don't actually take action. So you need to take action on the things you discover. Try it. And then once you take action, keep track. Keep a journal. Assess what you're doing. Take a look at it. Did it do anything? Did it change? The best thing to do is to do proper testing initially. So you got baseline, take some steps, retest, and see what you did. If you don't have that luxury to afford all those tests, then just go through the symptoms. Note all the symptoms first. That's your baseline. Take your steps. See if you get improvements. And once you do that, you reassess all of this stuff. Okay, I got improvements here, but I don't have them here. So what worked? When you figure out what worked, double down on that. Do more of what worked. That's the other thing. Sometimes people just yeah, I get this, the diet really helped, but then I stopped doing it. Well, why did you stop doing it? It was freaking working. Don't stop. When you find something that works, don't stop. Keep doing it. Same thing. Yeah. So you reassess, double down on what works. Something didn't work, try something else. Go through the whole process again. Keep trying, keep working, keep refining it. That's the process. That's the best practice. Next question. Does Hashimoto's shorten your lifespan? If so, what can we do to build physical stamina, lose weight, regain our quality of life? Now, it's hard to say whether or not Hashimoto's directly shortens your lifespan. Certainly having autoimmune disease, having poorly managed Hashimoto's puts you at risk for some major things later in life, like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and neurodegeneration. Can also cause destruction of other organ systems like the heart and things like that. So definitely puts you at risk for things, but doesn't necessarily do it directly. I don't know. We can say that with certainty. But certainly, we don't want to let this thing progress. We want to do everything we can to calm it down and to slow or stop the progression. So, how to build physical stamina. I got some questions about exercise. When I get to those, I'll tell you about that. It's kind of like there's a key to exercising properly, and that's kind of tied in with that. So let me get to the exercise ones, and we'll talk about that. Next question, why is Hashimoto's such an insidious and complex disease affecting all systems of the body, being much more serious than one might first assume? Well, that's a great question. But why is it so insidious? It's because it's autoimmune. And autoimmune it's not, this is the thing, like this idea that removing your thyroid removes Hashimoto's is just like so primitive and so backwards. It's not true. There's no evidence of that. And many, many people with Hashimoto's and autoimmunity have it in multiple systems. You know, the different parts of our body are like basically made from the same stuff. There's very, very minor variations from one tissue to the next. We talked about those, amino acid sequences, the proteins. Well, like there's only 15 amino acids in nature, and the ones that make up our tissue are all very, very closely related. It's not like this part of your body is made of plastic and this is made of steel. It's all the same stuff. So it's very, very common to have autoimmunity in more than one part of your body. And the problem is nobody's testing for it, nobody's looking for it, but that doesn't mean it's not there. And this is why it's so insidious. This is why it's affecting all these different systems, because it's causing, you have this dual thing happening. You could have autoimmunity in multiple places, or you just have, one place breaking down, like the thyroid, which is, has consequences everywhere. Every cell in your body has thyroid receptors, thyroid hormone receptors. So it impacts everything. So that's why it's the autoimmunity and the thyroid pieces together create this really powerful, combination that has huge destructive potential, which is why we have to take it seriously. Great question. How to live without supplements? I'm serious. What if I have no way to get them or enough money? What then? Yeah. Well, what then is, there's a lot of things you can do that don't involve pills and supplements. I was saying people, we're fixated as a culture on pills. Like we've been conditioned to think it's about more supplements and it's about more pills or more medication, and it's just not. Again, the places of maximum leverage are diet, dealing with stress in a major way, and healing the body using food and conscious things. So, and I'm sorry, the third one was mindset, really, I was thinking about. So, yeah, diet, dealing with stress, and your mindset. So, getting your mind right, getting your thinking right, and working on this, on a daily basis are really the key things if you don't want to get supplements. You can do a whole lot with diet, meditation, qigong exercises, the right type of exercise. There's a ton that can be done in that area alone if you really, really focus on them. Someone asked for a flow diagram table, step-by-step list of how to modulate Hashimoto's and live with it peacefully. I have that I don't have a table, but I do have an entire book, 426 pages, for how to do that. Another shameful promotion, I'm sorry. What's the long-term plan prognosis? Well, the long-term prognosis can be good if you deal with it. The long-term plan prognosis is bad if you ignore these issues and don't take them seriously. So it's really up to you what the prognosis is. What should we do and what shouldn't we do to prevent inflammation in our bodies? Well, what we should do is, we talked about already, find the triggers and eliminate them. Deal with stress. I think stress is the single most destructive inflammatory process in our lives, and a lot of people don't take it seriously. So elevate stress to like number one, public enemy number one is stress. That's what you should do, and treat it like that. So do everything you can to lower your stress of every single day. Like, think of it as something that will kill you. And if you think of it that way, rather than just, oh yeah, it's stress, I know it's a problem intellectually, but I'm busy and I can't stop. Well, no, you have to take it seriously. Next question, what besides diet can be done to help heal a leaky gut and a leaky brain? I think this is a good point. Not everybody's aware of this connection, but if you do have leaky gut, what that means really is you have impermeability of the barrier systems of your body, right? These barrier systems are found in different parts of the body. There's the gut is one barrier system, the lungs have another barrier system, the skin obviously is a barrier, and the blood-brain barrier is another barrier system. And all of these internal barrier systems, the gut, the lungs, the blood-brain barrier, are all made of the same proteins. And what we found is, as they break down in one area, they often break down in others. So there's a huge, huge link between the gut and the brain, and often, that's absolutely right. You get leaky gut, you end up with leaky brain. And how to heal them? Well, diet is critically important. So I don't think you can eliminate diet from that process of healing. It's absolutely essential in healing. We have to reduce or eliminate those triggers that are causing the breakdown of the barrier systems. Like, you can't get away from that. On top of that, again, stress is a huge factor in breaking down the barrier system. Cortisol is one of the things that causes permeability. So you got to deal with stress. I think, making sure you're getting enough blood flow to these areas is also critically important. The thing about the brain is it's really kind of an extremity, just like your hands and feet. If you have cold hands and feet, cold nose, well, chances are your blood flow to your brain is not ideal either. So, make sure your blood pressure is not too low. We don't want it too high, but we don't want it too low either. Keep your blood pressure in a good zone. Getting blood flow to these areas, getting oxygen to these areas. That's why meditation, qigong, yoga exercises that involve oxygenation of your cells, that's a way of healing these systems too. What exercises are beneficial and appropriate for someone with Hashimoto's that won't exacerbate symptoms? Great question. And we touched on this a little bit earlier. Like, the thing about exercise is, I think, and I just touched on it here too, like, I think one of the critical things we want to do is get oxygen and energy to the cells of our body. That's something that can be very healing. So qigong, yoga, I'm a huge fan of qigong because it does so many things that are beneficial in this situation. It helps modulate immune function. It calms your immune system. It's relaxing and helps deal with stress. It's oxygenating. You're doing this simple movement and breathing exercises. What they're doing is you're bringing oxygen into your body and into your extremities. Like, hugely, hugely beneficial. The other thing about exercise in general is, for people with Hashimoto's, there's a sort of bell curve of exercise benefit, and you need to find for you the top of the curve. And by what I mean by that is, like, that's the place where you have maximum results. Because what happens is, you go up to here, it's just enough where you feel energized, you feel good, you get the oxygen, you get all the things we need. But then as you continue on down the other side of the curve, it's diminished returns and destructive potential until, like, you're actually doing more harm than good down here. So you got to find that sweet spot at the top of the bell curve, because that's your place to build from. What I have a lot of my people do is there's a 7-minute, it's called a 7-minute scientific workout. And basically it's, high intensity, short duration for 7 minutes. This is what I do on a regular basis for working out, and it's short. It's a quick little kind of mini workout, but it's ideal because it energizes me. It gives you get all the benefits of exercise, and you get energized. You get the oxygen. You get the healing, but you don't get the fatigue and the exhaustion and the immune stimulation and the stress. Like, those are the things. When you go past, like I said, you go that other side of the curve, you start to lose all the benefit. So those are all things that are beneficial. Here's one. My biggest concern is about keeping the weight off with Hashimoto's, which obviously has to do how our metabolism is affected. I'm a runner. And by runner, I mean I run every day, 3 to 4 miles, and some longer runs on the weekends. Once in a while, I run a half marathon, and I've run a full marathons in my life. I love running. It's become my time alone with my thoughts. The thought of me giving up absolutely upsets me. Totally get that. In addition, recently I've been practicing yoga regularly, meaning that I go as many times a week as I'm able to. Is that on top of my running? So I'm probably working out more than most. Yeah. And this is perfect for what I just discussed. I read some information on how too much exercise can actually hurt some people with Hashimoto's. I'd like to get your take on this and how much we should be exercising. Again, you have to find that sweet spot at the top of the curve. And if you're doing it too much, you are causing problems. You're doing more harm than good. Because it's too much exercise is very stressful. We don't need more stress. You're already under so much physiological stress dealing with Hashimoto's and autoimmunity. Adding additional stress can be really destructive. So it's too stressful. It also can stimulate your immune system, which you don't need stimulated any longer. So you really need to find the top of the curve. And I'm sorry to say it, but the truth of the matter is it may mean cutting back initially to find that sweet spot. You're used to exercising a lot, so you may have a higher threshold than other people do, but you got to back off and you got to find the place where you're getting maximum benefit. It's a little different for everybody. There's some people, I give that 7-minute exercise to, they can't even do 7 minutes because they're so depleted. So you got to find that sweet spot, start there, and build from it. And then, really the key is it's about balance. Like you can't, just like with everything else, you can't overdo it. Since autoimmune disorders seem to often occur in clusters, what other autoimmune disorders, diseases should we be on the lookout for, and which ones tend to appear in conjunction with Hashimoto's? There was an interesting study out of the UK where they looked at other autoimmune diseases that occur with Hashimoto's. Rheumatoid arthritis was the top one. But there's a whole host of other ones that potentially can happen. There are a lot of the common ones like vitiligo. I've seen with a number of people. Psoriasis is pretty common. Sjogren's syndrome is common. Like I said, it's very. Once the door is open, it's not hard to develop something else. So there's an excellent test with a lab called Cyrex Labs where they actually test you for multiple. It's a full multiple screening of all of these different autoimmune markers to see if you have them.